Hi there, this is Rob at Reason101.net, and I'm here to show you a more advanced tutorial using an arpeggiator, using the RPG-8 that's found in Reason 4 and 5, and it's to create a sound that's something like this. Okay, the idea is to expand the way that you work with the RPG-8 and do something that's not traditionally seen using an RPG-8. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to recreate that type of patch for you. What you first have to do is create a combinator. I'm going to throw this underneath here. I'm going to take my C major chord. That's all it is. It's just the C major. I'm going to move this down here, keep a little bit of order here. Let's back it up. Okay, inside the Combinator patch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my empty Combinator template. It has just a line 6.2 mixer. Underneath that mixer, I'm going to create a maelstrom, and I'm going to load up my Tin Blast patch. You can use pretty much any sound that you want to come up with. This is just my own sound just to get something started. It doesn't use shift, so just keep that neutral for now. And then underneath that, what I'm going to do is create an RPG-8. And this, if you flip it around using the tab key, it's going to automatically root up to control the maelstrom. So if you play it back at this point, that's what you hear. Okay, but now we're going to expand on that, and we're going to create another arpeggiator underneath it, which is not going to be routed to anything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gate output, and I'm going to send that into the arpeggiator trigger input. I'm also going to take the note CV output and send that to the shift parameter, and move the shift parameter down to about 40 or so. Nope, I want 40. Come on. There we go. Okay, now this is basically affecting the shift parameter of both the A and B oscillators, and it's using the note output from the arpeggiator. What's happening here, these are your CV inputs, so you can control gate length, velocity, rate, octave shift, and the start of the triggering. Important things to keep in mind with these inputs is that whatever inputs you have on these four, they're not going to be reflected when you go to copy the notes to track. But that's not a big problem if you don't copy the notes to track, which I never do, because if you want to come back to the arpeggiator later to make changes, you can. Whereas if you copy them to track, you're committing those notes to the track and you can't change them afterwards. So keep that in mind. And also the other thing to keep in mind is that any CV inputs that you send into this CV parameter, except the start arpeggiator trig in, any of these parameters are mixed. That CV is mixed with what you have on the front panels for those parameters. So it's additive. Whatever CV you input, it's going to be added to these parameters and to get your main output. So that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to shape this. I'm going to put 4.2 as the insert over here. I'm going to put 3.1 as the insert here. I'm going to bring the rate of the second arpeggiator down to 1/8. I'm going to leave pretty much everything else the way it is. I am going to bring this gate length up to about 63 or 64, somewhere around there. I'm going to turn the pattern on here, and I'm going to make a few changes here. Okay, that is basically going to do it for that. Now, if we listen to it, here's what it sounds like now. What's happening is this pattern is re-triggering this arpeggiator because we have the gate going into the CV input here. The other thing is that the notes that are played here, the notes are going to affect the shift parameter on both these maelstroms, on both the oscillators in the maelstrom. So that's what's happening there. Now the other thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here, I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I'm going to create a subtractor, and then I'm going to hold down my shift key still and create a Spider CV merger splitter. I'm going to sync up LFO1, I'm going to move the amount knob all the way up, and I'm going to flip around to the back. I'm going to send the LFO1 into the split, and I'm going to send 2 splits to the merger, bring the trim knobs all the way up, and then send the merged output up to the gate length CV input here, and then move the trim knob all the way up. Now what's going to happen is this rate is going to affect the gate length of the first arpeggiator here. It's going to deal with that gate length. So I'm going to move the gate length down a little bit on this as well. Okay, so now let's play it. Okay, so that's what's happening there. So now we can do a couple interesting things inside the combinator itself. What I'm going to do over here is I'm going to let this control the pattern of the second arpeggiator. This one is going to control the gate length. This is going to control the shift of the maelstroms. And then this is going to control the rate from the subtractor. So let's set that up. For the pattern, we're going to select the second arpeggiator. We're going to go to the rotary 1, and we're going to take the arpeggiator, no, pattern, and then select pattern here. So now what's happening, if you want to see, look at this pattern section here. As you change the knob, it's going to change the type of pattern that you get. And in that way, you can change basically the retriggering of this section of the arpeggiator, and at the same time change the shift parameter of the maelstrom. So to some extent, not fully. Now the gate length, what we're going to do there is we're going to control this gate length parameter of the first arpeggiator. So we're going to take rotary 2 and use the gate length for that. And then for the shift, we're going to go back to the maelstrom, and that shift parameter is going to control the shift of oscillator A and the shift of oscillator B. So create 2 instances of rotary 3, and we're going to control the oscillator A shift and the oscillator B shift. Okay, and then finally for the rate, we're going to go down to the subtractor, and on rotary 4, we're going to take the LFO 1 rate. Okay, so now when you play, you can start playing around with the parameters. Actually, what I'm going to do instead of the gate length, I'm going to do the octave shift, because that was a different parameter that actually came out to be a little more interesting. So let's change this to octave shift, and then under the first arpeggiator, select rotary 2, and instead of gate length, we're going to do the octave shift. So that's under keyboard, and that's going to go from -3 to +3, and on arpeggiator 4, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take octave shift, but we're going to do +3 to -3. So it's going to move these, it's going to invert both of these octave shifts for both of these arpeggiators, and that should give us an interesting sound. So let's stop this and replay it. So that's pretty much all there is to it. There's a different way that you can use some arpeggiators to trigger some various parameters, and play around with the CV inputs on the back of the RPG-8s. So I hope you find this interesting. Again, my name is Rob. Come visit me at reason101.net for more interesting tutorials. And I'm going to make this patch available to people on my main blog. So thanks again for listening.